Here is a meeting with Patrick Dasgupta. He's a professor of physics at Delhi University. He went to college with me at Pilani. After that, he moved on to get a PhD at Indian Institute of Sciences, right?
No, I joined Indian Institute of Science, but after 1
but
year,
you got
I
it at
moved to
TIFR.
Yeah,
So got a PhD at TIFR, where he also got a wife. Am I right?
That's right.
So,
yes.
Yeah, so he got two things. And he got a third
also
thing.
My son.
And yeah, go ahead. He got interested in gravitation.
Right.
So three things, which have all three stayed with him pretty much, in his heart, all three are there. Now, Patrick will tell us something about his experiences at Pilani, at TIFR, as well as then tell us something about gravitation. I will pose one tiny question in the context of gravitation. Nothing that's meant to trick anybody. It's just sort of an interesting thing. So there are these particles called neutrinos that most of our listeners are probably familiar with from beta decay. Neutrinos are peculiar in that they interact only through the weak interactions. And as a result, they pretty much pass through everything. But they're considered to be very important in the universe as a whole. There's even an expectation that a significant amount of mass might be in their energy. Is it true or not? I don't know. How would one judge it experimentally or by data? I don't know, because it's not my area. But at the same time, something that tiny, which has, I think they just got an upper limit on its mass, right? There's no lower limit.
So the electron neutrino, a recent measurement tell us that the upper limit is 0.8 electron volt.
And it could be as low as 0.2, but they don't know that. But there's no lower limit. As far as we know so far, things can change any day. Next thing you know, there are 5 Nobel Prizes coming out. So, Patrick, you can tell us a little bit about something esoteric like that. But first, tell us about how did you get interested in this, starting with Pilani?
Great. So, just like Rattan, I was also the National Science Talent Scholar of 1976. So as you know, BITS Pilani being a private institution, they immediately sent invitation letters to all the National Science Talent Scholars. I'm sure Rattan would have also received one during his days.
I did. We were in the same program.
Absolutely.
But I was 1 year ahead of you.
Correct. So IIT Delhi had also sent a letter, but IIT Delhi had said that join in the atmospheric physics group. While, BITS Pilani with its exquisite prospectus that they sent with gliding club, swimming pool, horse riding and all that, we youngsters would naturally get attracted to such a prospectus and not a dry letter that had come from IIT Delhi. So, and let me tell you that Rajasthan had an attraction for me because I had grown up during my school days reading Satyajit Ray's Feluda novels, Feluda stories. And one of the Feluda stories that he made a film also, Shonar Killa, was all about Jaisalmer Golden Fortress. So obviously you can see my fascination for desert and all that. So all that led me to choose BITS Pilani, and I landed up there. I will not tell you my first experience when I landed up. That's besides the point. But yes, remember 1976 emergency had just been lifted. So our batch faced a stringent set of ragging because during the emergency, there was no ragging anywhere in India. So when we landed up, our batch got the first, tremendous blow of ragging. But I enjoyed the ragging because, anyway, that's a separate story as to how I used to get scot-free in most of the raggings. But one of the raggings which I enjoyed a lot was by a group of guys led by Pratik Mishra, who was also a National Science Talent Scholar of his days. Pratik Mishra, I think, was 2 years or 3 years senior to me. So he was also a Shankar Bhavan inmate. So he got 3-4 of us freshers. The custom in bits was that till the ragging is over, they will not introduce themselves. So after the ragging is over, they will give the intros. So I didn't know who these guys were who were ragging us, but Pratik Mishra's gang asked me, what are you interested in? So I said, physics. Okay. Tell me, what is the velocity of sound in vacuum? So I immediately said, sound doesn't travel in vacuum. So the guy said, okay, that's fine. But now that Rattan talked about gravity, Shubhrata Roy, another friend of Pratik Mishra, I said, okay, I'll give you another question. 2 buckets. In one, there is water at room temperature, 30 degrees centigrade. In another, the water is at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And I drop 2 pieces of chalks. And in which do you think, due to gravity, the chalk will land at the bottom of the bucket? So I thought for a while, and immediately I realized one is 30 degrees centigrade, the other is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So I realized that the 32 degree Fahrenheit water would be frozen ice. So obviously chalk won't go through it. And I said that the bucket where the water is 30 degrees centigrade, the chalk will go through and reach the bucket. So this ragging was very interesting because they were ragging me on physics questions. There were other kinds of raggings too. In one, which there was a guy, I've forgotten, Lal was his name, or I've forgotten his name. We freshers had arrived early on. And we freshers, as usual, we took our armchairs outside on the corridor, and we were, I was in 276 Shankar Bhavan, that was on the first floor. And myself, MS Deepak, my batchmate, we were hanging out on the corridor, chatting of all. Suddenly, 2 seniors, they had landed up on that day, and they saw us, enjoying, having good time. They were furious that why should the freshers be hanging out, having good time? So one of the guys, stout guy, later on I came to know his name was Lal. He came and said, stand up. So I stood up and said, stand up on there was a sort of brick railing, a standard railing, and jumped from the thing downwards. So MS Deepak got scared. What the hell is this? But I was a wacky sort of a guy. I got up to the railing, and the guy said, now you jump. I jumped onto the corridor, this side. That made Lal even more furious. He said, say again, here, gravity was coming in. So I used the gravity and jumped on the other side. And he became furious. You say, you're trying to act smart? Come. Anyway, then what followed is a different thing. It turned out that he was from Kolkata. He realized I am Bengali. And he said, what? You are a Bengali guy and you were trying to act smart with me. Then again, he softened and gave me the intro. So Pilani was a great place, and a batchmate of Rattan Nath. I don't know whether I should name him, but Rattan Nath and that guy, they were great physics enthusiasts. They together wrote up a book called Concepts in Science.
Sanjeev Rattan Mishra.
Sanjeev Rattan Mishra, that's right. So they together had written the book, and
with Bala Subramaniam, there were 3 of us.
3 of us, right. And we had great time with the Concepts in Science course and all that stuff. That was the first time, because there was some elements of astrophysics, particularly Hertzsprung-Russell diagram and all that. I had not had any exposure to astronomy, astrophysics during that time. So that was the first exposure, and I never thought that I will end up working in the field, but it was, BITS those days, it was it was a fun place to, live during that time. And
no, I agree, because the thing for me that I noticed right away was that they were innovative. They were trying to figure out how to do things in a different way. There was no set way of doing it.
Correct.
And that was so different. I came from AMU actually, because with the Science Talent Scholarship, I had enrolled at AMU and I transferred after 6 months to Pilani. I had the same letter that you had, open-ended, just come and join. And there was a difference in the way they did things. At AMU, everything was cut and dry. At Pilani, you were pretty much your own master. And, nobody would push you around.
Remember, Rattan, during that time, there were no assigned admission, except all the science talent scholars had that SXX assigned all to them. But others who were not assigned, who came with XXX,
you had to compete for everything.
Could land up. They came to do engineering, but after 1 year, they could land up in English literature. So
and it happened.
That created a lot of tension among students.
I thought it was funny though, but a lot of guys were very tense. I know. I thought it was very, very funny that, it could happen. My mom teaches English, so I didn't see it as a negative.
Problem. Yeah. And I don't know whether you remember, because of that, there was a major strike in 1980.
Yeah, I was there. I was part of it, not the strike itself. I was sort of like observing it because I'm not a strike kind of person. It takes a lot to get me moving.
Anyway, that's a different story. That strike affected my career because I was supposed to go for my NSTS summer school to TIFR. But because of the strike, all the compres got postponed. So compres were actually held in 80 in May month instead of in April. So I could not go for my summer school at TIFR. I missed one great opportunity. And anyway, that's a separate story. I'm digressing. But Rattan Nath, he had initially said that something on gravitational waves and Russia-Ukraine war.
This was the stories part, right? We had a title that had gravitational waves. Now, your daughter-in-law is Russian. What is her opinion?
Oh, yeah. She these days passes sleepless night because her parents have a business concerning spices. All right. So they have a company which gets spices from abroad and also from India and the Indian subcontinents. And they mix the local spice and the product. They have a blended spice and that is the product. And now with the war and sanction, her parents are very worried whether, how that would affect the import of spices from Indian subcontinent region and some parts of African region and so on, and South America, etc. So they are worried, and my daughter-in-law
which means means they're not in favor of the war. They really have something to lose.
That's true, because what my daughter-in-law says is that now most of the Russians, they have got accustomed with the tech and luxury goods from the developed countries of Europe and America. This was not the case during the USSR days. And so therefore now they don't want to give up on those luxury comfort items, right? So
yeah, no, I wouldn't either. It would be kind of foolish,
right?
To willingly go into
Yeah. Most of the non-state employees of Russia are probably against the war.
I would think so, yeah. That would be the rational thing to do. Whatever else may be true, Russians are pretty smart in a mathematical sense. So, so they don't give in to that stuff that easily. I'm sure if there was a little bit more liberty there, they would kick out this guy. But anyway, we'll see what develops now. From what I can tell, and I don't think any of us really know what's going on, but from what I can tell, this was supposed to be a cakewalk, and it's turning out not to be one. The resistance is very stiff, and I think it has come as a surprise to Putin, at least, even if people below him sort of expected it. But I guess they were afraid to say it. And so now they are in it, not knowing how to get out. And something similar played out in Chechnya when they had sent tanks in and the Chechens blew up the tanks and then they were stuck. It took a lot of effort to pull Russia out and still keep Chechnya in Russia. It was quite it took like months and months, probably more than a year for that thing to settle down. I don't think they have that kind of time here. If this thing does not go down in a couple of days, he's got a big problem on his hand.
That's right.
This is not Chechnya. This is 44 million people. It's about half of Russia's population. It's not something you can walk away. It's not like a couple of million Chechens.
Correct. And can I say some hush speculations of mine here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So my speculation is there is already an elite commando team which has been sent to get rid of Putin. That's my speculation.
To get rid of Putin, I was thinking of what's the name of that guy? Zelensky.
No. I'm talking about, Zelensky was a erstwhile television serial actor of Ukraine.
Right. No, he's proving to be very tough, but I thought he's the one who would be targeted next.
No. I think, Putin is now recognized to be a full-fledged dictator, right?
Yeah.
So my speculation is that there is an elite commando team. The thing is that NATO countries would not like to move its troops to defend Ukraine. Okay, because if they do so, then it will be a full-blown nuclear war.
Maybe.
Okay, so Biden's government has already said that they are not going to send troops.
Yeah.
But I won't be surprised if there's a covert commando group has been already dispatched to get rid of Putin. That's, of course, it's a fiction. It could be a fiction. It could be. All Rattan.
It's worth a novel for sure.
Sorry?
One could write a novel about it.
Absolutely, but remember that in the past, Colonel Gaddafi, Saddam, Osama, they have been got rid of, right? But this has to be a real elite commando group. They can't use the drones like they had done in the case of Osama bin Laden. But it has to be, because I was watching yesterday the spokesperson of the Pentagon interacting with the media, and the spokesperson was looking very tense and worried, which was not the case earlier when I had seen him. So I think something is cooking. It's purely my speculation, of course.
Yeah, I would say before they do something like that, what might happen is they may supply surface-to-surface cruise missiles to Ukraine. And next thing you know, they're targeting something deep in Russia, and that'll change the flavor. Right now, Ukraine does not have long-distance missiles.
Right. But the problem with that scenario is that Putin has already warned that if anything of that kind NATO countries try, the consequence that Europe will face
Oh, but NATO
is
countries don't have to fire
unimaginable.
it. No, Ukraine is already using American weapons, the Javelin and the Stingers. So adding another missile to it, a cruise missile, is no different. But the Ukrainians would be firing. And
That's
as
right. But
long
if
as,
Putin faces such heat, again, my speculation. That's why I said that when am I allowed to do hush hush
oh, yeah,
speculation?
absolutely. I mean, all of us are thinking the same thing. As far as I can tell, Ukraine has a fairly advanced armaments industry. So it's not a pushover by any means. For example, the Indian Air Force is waiting for Ukraine to supply it with air-to-air missiles for their Sukhoi bombers,
Right.
which are shared with Russia. So Ukraine flies the same bombers that India does and Russia does. They have pretty much the same kind of munitions. Ukraine is also building the engines for 4 Indian frigates that are to be fitted in Russia. All of that is on hold now because of this
Yeah, but do you think that
little thing.
if Putin faces the heat, that kind of heat from Ukraine, would he hold himself back in using the nerve poison gas? I mean,
No, he won't.
Russia,
He'll probably target the civilians in Ukraine. That is not unlikely. And if that happens, there would be a third world war.
Exactly. So then, as you know, Rattan, in the past, KGB has not hesitated in using some lethal poison like the British
Yeah.
group where,
Yeah, but he cannot apply it in but there's only so much of it, like how many polonium things can you set off, all of us have some polonium in our houses, right? And our smoke detectors.
Right. But suppose I don't know, these are pure speculation. How much chemical warfare advance whether has Russians mastered? So when he was threatening, did he have the sleeve up did he have this ace up his sleeve that in case things go bad?
I don't think it's an ace because all of these nations have stockpiles of nerve agents. Each and every one of them.
If Russia has the first strike,
they cannot really get very far. It's very hard to deliver those agents. And it'll be actually a lot easier for a place like United States to deliver it to them than for Russia to deliver it to United States.
True, but or the even to England. Who does the first strike? That is the question. So
Saddam Hussein tried it. It didn't work. It worked only on unarmed people. So like you could kill Kurds and things, but whenever people could fire back, it never worked. The agents are not that fast. It's not that it wasn't tried. It's not the most effective thing when it comes to bioweapons or chemical weapons. They're hard to deliver. So they get 20 people, and then you've spent all that effort, you're getting hammered, and it doesn't go anywhere.
Yes, but the thing is that if you watch the body language of Putin versus the body language of Pentagon spokesperson, you would realize that Putin looked extremely confident, while the spokesperson of Pentagon, you just have to go to yesterday's, I'm sure it would be available now. He clearly looked worried, pensive. For the first time, I saw him putting on glasses, going through the sort of a shuffle of papers he had in front. So I strongly feel there is something really serious that is cooking. And I'm sure with all the great networks that USA has, Secret Service networks, they have figured out something, and that makes them worried. And that's the reason
Well,
why.
it's a very disciplined approach, to systematically respond to Putin step by step and not lose your sort of discipline in the matter. Because if you do and you over respond, then things may escalate out of control. Right now, I think Biden is playing Putin than the other way around. If I were to guess, I would guess Putin is the one who's really getting worried because this was supposed to be a cakewalk. And now their first line of reserves is already rolling in. The initial attack force already got decimated. So the second line is rolling into Ukraine, and they have another third left. After that, they have to go into the reserves deeper into the nation, and 1/3 of Russia's army was already deployed to begin with. So if 1/3 of the defense forces are consumed by the Ukraine conflict, that's a big problem. That is
Right,
not the way it was
but
supposed to play
the
out.
thing,
It was supposed
since
to
the
be over in a day.
what you're saying is absolutely right, but the fact remains that since now the world knows that Putin is not popular among Russians, a large section of
It's a
Russians,
big problem,
uh,
yeah.
and therefore, if Putin is removed now, there won't be any backlash from Russia later. So
Yeah,
probably
I don't think so. Medvedev would be happy to be president without any Putin to answer to. you know, he's already been president once, right? But without powers. This time he'd
yes.
say, okay, let me have the real thing.
So yeah, but of
We'll
course
see.
we are only speculating, and
Yeah.
uh, so coming days would be uh, worrisome if it turns out there's a full-fledged world war, because
Your skills
nukes.
may come in play there. In case there's a world war, would you offer your skills with gravitational waves?
Well, the gravitational waves can be very, very useful in detecting any surface disturbance, because the gravitational waves detectors like laser interferometric devices that are there in the east coast and west coast of USA, they are so sensitive. Any seismic vibration which is taken as a uh, hindrance for the gravitational wave researchers, because they dominate the responses of the detector. So any tiny seismic disturbance that takes place in Russian region can be easily intercepted by the LIGO detectors and also the Virgo detector in Europe. So gravitational wave detectors can easily be used to find out the mobilization of weapons, even as far as Russia is concerned. So therefore, uh, I won't be surprised if there are instructions to the scientists at LIGO to do this. I won't be surprised. Uh, of course, it would mean that the CIA and Pentagon have to supply the kind of seismic vibration pattern which mobilization of arms and nuclear warheads generate. And once they are supplied to the physicists in LIGO observatories, they can easily use that signal to create templates and do match filtering techniques, like the
And
way
that would,
radars do it, and detect these signals. So, yeah, so there's another speculation whether the scientists of LIGO have been already instructed to do that.
well, let's hope
And
they have been.
yeah,
I would certainly hope they have been. Never hurts to use whatever technology there is for the maximum benefit it can deliver.
yeah. And we all know that how in USA in particular, fundamental science research and defense research go hand in hand. The Los Alamos project, where nuclear bomb was being built in early, late 30s, 1930s and early 40s, tell us that fundamental researchers like Einstein, Feynman, Niels Bohr, they were all put in the same region. They were carrying out their fundamental research as well as working for the atomic bomb project. So this has been
tell us something about neutrinos now. So like, we know neutrinos are generated in various decays, like from, beta decays and
any
things.
radioactive decay like
but where
decay.
where is the sink for the neutrinos? So they are created there.
Sinks are, any matter can be sinks for neutrinos, but neutrinos being interacting with matter only through weak interaction. So therefore, the sinks are not efficient in absorbing the neutrinos. And that's the reason why it's so very difficult to directly detect neutrinos.
Yeah, so that's what you see. I think in terms of continuity equation, yeah, you're creating them all the time. Easy to see them being created. You don't see them really being absorbed that much.
So in fact, right now as we are speaking, neutrinos generated from the cosmos, from the radioactive decays happening at the center of the Earth, the neutrinos from the sun, the so-called solar neutrinos, there are more than 100 neutrinos every second passing through our body. But since neutrinos, they don't carry any electric charge, they only interact with other matter through gravity and through weak forces. And gravity is weaker than weak forces by many orders of magnitude. So therefore, weak forces are the dominant interaction through which neutrinos interact with the rest of the matter. It is very hard to absorb a neutrino and get a signal. But of course, there are neutrino observatories like in the MON detectors. And since there is a recent prediction of a supernova, I'm sure many of you would have read it all over the internet, that there's a prediction of a supernova explosion soon to take place. By soon, of course, when astronomers say soon, it could be after 100 days, it could be after 1 year, it could be after a million years. That kind of uncertainties are very typical in astronomy and astrophysics. And many MOND, like the so-called detectors, neutrino detectors, as well as gravitational wave detectors, are keen to observe. Gravitational wave detectors would try to observe the gravitational waves from those powerful supernova explosion. And because supernovae, 99% of the supernovae energy is released in the form of neutrinos. So Mont Blanc detectors would like to catch these neutrinos from supernovae. And, it would have been great for India too, because India started the INO project as a proposal way back in early 90s. But because, and the work started, the tunnel digging in near Madurai started, but then environmental people and local politics got into it, and the Indian Neutrino Observatory, the INO project, got shelved, and many of its earlier desires and ambition got, superseded by Chinese neutrino detectors. And so that was very unfortunate, because very established neutrino physicists like Professor Rajshekharan and Professor Nava Mandal were involved in it. But due to the local politics, the whole INO program has got enormously delayed. And I'm sure if INO was there, it would have been all the physicists would have been excited about the neutrinos being detected from the imminent supernova that is projected to set off in the coming, days to years. So on. And also neutrinos, as Rattan Nath was mentioning, that the whole idea that neutrinos have non-zero rest masses mean that the Salam-Weinberg-Glashow theory of electroweak unification is not the final story. Is there gas leaking? Shivani, is gas leaking? I got that smell. Yeah. So, the fact that neutrinos have mass, which solar neutrino problem.
If they have mass.
No, they have mass. Today we know that.
Well, if they have rest mass,
that neutrino, neutrino oscillation, that electron neutrino oscillating to muon neutrino oscillating to tau lepton neutrino, which has been observed in the laboratories, immediately tell you that neutrinos have non-zero masses. And that means that the Salam-Weinberg-Glashow theory of electroweak unification is not the ultimate story. So there is physics beyond the so-called standard model of SU2 cross U1 cross SU3. SU3 is the group that dictates the strong interaction between quarks. This theory is not the final theory. So there is a theory more fundamental, which is labeled as beyond standard model physics. And neutrinos, therefore, is the harbinger to understand more about beyond standard model physics. And everyone is eyeing the neutrinos. So I myself, with my student, we theorists like to speculate. So there's something called sterile neutrinos, which were theorized to explain why neutrinos have very tiny masses, the so-called seesaw mechanism, where seesaw tips the ground, the end which is down, those generate the light neutrinos like electron neutrinos, neon neutrinos, tau lepton neutrino, while there will be the other end which goes up will generate very massive neutrinos, so far not detected. These are all theoretical models. And they were speculative to sterile meaning except gravity, they don't interact even weakly with other particles. So I had theorized that maybe sterile neutrinos don't have usual gravity. They probably have anti-gravity, which could explain the so-called dark energy problem. So again, that was another speculation of mine, that whether sterile neutrinos would be associated with anti-gravity. So neutrinos, as you can see,
in physics, everything comes down to how do you test it. So whenever you have a theory, it immediately goes to, can you devise a setup in which you can test it?
Correct, absolutely. But the whole idea that the sterile neutrinos only have gravitational interaction makes it very, very difficult to catch them directly. So the only way you can do it is use astrophysical and cosmological bounds. So I had some idea that perhaps it is the sterile neutrinos anti-gravity which helps supernova explosion. And there were another thing as to why today the accelerated expansion of the universe, why is it happening today? And in our work, we have already presented in conferences, but as you can see, such a wild idea, referees would not like it. So we are in constant argument with the referees, particularly, as you know, anyone would tell you that if you're sitting in India and have a wild idea that Western physicists have not thought about, you would face stringent comments from referees, but that's part of the game. And my point is that we are in theoretical physics because we love to imagine, right? So it is wild possible mathematical imagination that gives the steroid to us. And that's what makes physics for me so very exciting, that you can have tremendous amount of possibilities. And,
well, you have now sabbatical that you're roughly halfway through, right?
Yes, but half of my sabbatical has got consumed in reviewing 5 PhD theses.
So you have 6 months is a lot of time to speculate more.
No, I have also I have
so
also
you have a few months left.
Yeah, that few months I am going to devote in writing a book which I have already, entered I have got into a contract, and I've been getting reminders when I'm going to submit the manuscript. And so this is, and my next thing is I have to somehow finish the book, submit it to the publishers, and then I'll come back to my wild theories.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's really good. That's a good use of a sabbatical to write a book, and of course to come up with models. And actually at this point, it would seem that you're right in the thick of it, because now with the action in Ukraine, you have a daughter-in-law who's Russian, who has a business interest in the whole matter. And the LIGO detectors could potentially help out in their application in the military technology. And there's a book going on. So that's really good, Patrick.
Not as good as your direct research on insulin and diabetes. Those are much more immediate and much more useful directly to human beings. I mean, at least I consider myself a mathematical science fiction author. So who enjoy using mathematics to fantasize in a science fiction manner. And that is always what attracted me to this whole field. And I'm much more of, one of those impractical guys who like to dream. That is what gives me the kicks. So I enjoy it, as long as I always, request God to not, forbid me to get Alzheimer or something. That would be terrible. I mean,
you never know, because, let's say the way I think of it is, if I got Alzheimer's, every day would be a new day.
Right. No, but who knows? So that's why I keep consuming a lot of turmeric.
Oh, it does. I can tell you that it does. It doesn't do anything.
Perhaps, but some time back I read a report. American Alzheimer's specialists, they from the data they figured out that villages in India, they don't seem to get affected by Alzheimer's. So they're curious to what is it they consume, and they figured out that
they die early. The ones who are going to get Alzheimer's, they die early.
But there are many villagers who live for long, and their theory was that it is the turmeric, which is known to be anti-inflammatory. Turmeric perhaps protects the brain cells in some way. Of course, these are
actually there was a paper in Cell on that, and it turns out turmeric is not anti-inflammatory.
Really?
Yeah, that was a big surprise.
That's a bad news. I have been consuming.
Well, it's not bad news. It doesn't harm you. It doesn't harm you at all. But in the original expectations from it were based on data that was sort of faulty, because it has a strong fluorescence signal. So it actually interferes with measurements. So when the measurements were made more carefully, then it turned out it really wasn't doing anything. It was distorting the signal.
I see. I see. Good that
So
I
anyway,
had a chat with you because you're the expert on these subjects.
well,
What a waste that I have been sort of drinking hot water and turmeric.
I like turmeric lassi, so I have it anyway.
Right.
Whether it does anything for Alzheimer's or not, but I don't have it every day. But I have it, but it's got a good flavor.
So great. Now probably you should write an essay titled called "Turmeric in Turmoil."
Okay. So Patrick, I think the time allocated for us, we are 1 minute away from being done. So what would be your
think
message?
You should have the last word. I leave it to you to have
my
the last
word would be, my word is easy. I wish I had Patrick's life.
You have successfully transferred the last word to me.
That was the idea,
That's a good one. That's a good one. So take care, Rattan. Take care. I still remember our days. I still remember yours and late Professor S.K. Sharma's interactions, very passionate interactions. And we had a jolly good time. And except that we never shared the same hostel ever.
Yeah, we never did. Yeah. And I like Facebook because, it's ragging every day on Facebook.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll catch up again later, Patrick.
Yeah. Take care. Great having this virtual meeting with you. All the best, Rattan. Bye.
Bye, Patrick.
Bye, Rattan.